The ballroom sparkled with warm golden light, chandeliers hanging like crystal crowns above a sea of suited men and glittering women. Soft jazz floated through the air, and champagne flutes clinked with laughter. Layla adjusted the soft silk of her emerald gown over her growing belly and took a slow breath. Her heels already ached, but she had promised Adil she would be here to support him. It was a big night, the launch of his company's newest tech division, and Layla had helped design the original funding proposal. Not that anyone in the room knew that. She had been the silent strength behind it all, always preferring to uplift her husband from behind the curtain. Scanning the room, her eyes locked onto Adil, who stood across the floor, tall and handsome in his navy tuxedo. But he wasn't alone. His hand rested on the lower back of a strikingly young woman, petite, red-lipped, and clearly amused. Zara. Layla had seen her before at a few functions but never thought much of her. Tonight, however, something about the way Zara tilted her head when Adil whispered in her ear, the way her hand lingered on his chest, it made Layla's heart knock unevenly in her chest. Still, she gathered herself and walked over, reminding herself she was his wife, carrying his child. As she neared, Adil's eyes swept her up and down with a smirk that chilled her to the bone. "Darling," she said softly, placing a hand on his arm. He didn't smile. Instead, he laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "Layla, you should rest. These events aren't really built for comfort." His eyes flicked to her belly. "And that dress isn't doing you any favors." Zara giggled behind her hand. Layla froze, her cheeks flaming. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The betrayal didn't come from the words alone, it was his tone, the dismissal, the humiliation of being degraded in front of another woman like she was an embarrassing inconvenience. "I'll leave you to it," she whispered, her voice cracking. She turned and walked away, her vision blurring as hot tears spilled freely down her cheeks. Every step toward the exit felt like a crack splitting through her chest. She had come to support her husband. But instead, she left feeling invisible, discarded. And deep down, she knew, something inside their marriage had just shattered beyond repair. The next morning, Layla sat on the edge of her sister's guest bed, her eyes swollen from a night of restless sleep. She hadn't touched her phone, hadn't spoken to anyone, not even to Saba, her best friend since college. But by noon, the doorbell rang, and there she was, Saba, arms full of comfort food and eyes already brimming with fury. She didn't need Layla to explain, she had seen the pictures online. The event had been covered in local business blogs. One photo in particular showed Adil and Zara standing too close, his hand low on her back, a knowing smirk on both their faces. Layla's absence in the coverage was deafening. Without waiting for Layla to speak, Saba launched into action. She scoured LinkedIn, company websites, and even Zara's Instagram, putting the pieces together like a seasoned investigator. Within an hour, the truth came out. Zara wasn't just a random woman at the party. She was Adil's personal assistant. Hired 6 months ago, around the same time Adil's frequent business emergencies had begun. Dubai, Singapore, London. All of them under the guise of urgent investor meetings. And guess who was always tagged quietly in the background photos? Zara. Layla sat frozen as Saba laid out the evidence. Flight records, photos, even expense reports showing Zara's hotel stays charged to the company card. It felt like a slow, suffocating wave drowning her from the inside out. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was premeditated. Every moment she had spent wondering if she was overreacting had now transformed into horrifying clarity. That evening, Layla gathered what strength she had left and returned to the house. She had to hear it from him. When she walked into the living room, Adil barely glanced up from his phone. "I know about Zara," she said, her voice steady but low. He didn't look surprised. In fact, he smiled. "And," he said with a casual shrug, "I want the truth." Adil leaned back, finally meeting her eyes. "Truth? You really want that?" She nodded. He stood and walked toward her, a cruel glint in his eyes. "You were the warm-up act, Layla. The nice, obedient wife. But you got boring. Zara's fire. She's ambition. She understands the world I'm in now. Layla flinched. I gave up everything to support you. And I said thank you, he said mockingly. But I've upgraded. She stared at him, shocked into silence. Every memory they had built, every shared secret, every laugh, every plan, reduced to a disposable phase in his narrative. Then, with a dismissive wave of his hand, he said, "You can leave now. Go stay with your precious family, since you love playing the victim so much." Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall in front of him. She turned away, heart pounding, hands trembling. As she stepped out of the house she once called home, she made a silent vow. She may be broken now, but she would never let him define her again. Layla stood at the threshold of her younger sister Mahira's apartment, suitcase in one hand, the other resting gently on her belly. Mahira pulled her into a tight embrace before she could even say a word. No questions, no pressure, just warmth. The small two-bedroom apartment smelled of lavender and cardamom, and for the first time in days, Layla felt safe. Not whole, but safe. The first few days passed in quiet. Mahira worked from home, often slipping comforting meals onto Layla's bedside table, never pushing conversation. Layla, meanwhile, moved through the motions of grief, sleepless nights, swollen eyes, the silence of a phone that no longer buzzed with her husband's voice. But she wasn't alone. Every time she broke into tears in the middle of folding laundry or just standing at the window, Mahira would appear with tissues and silent company. One evening, Layla sat on the worn velvet couch, a mug of mint tea in her hands, as Mahira flipped through an old photo album. "Remember this?" Mahira grinned, pointing to a picture of Layla in a sharp blazer, standing in front of a whiteboard full of financial projections. Layla smiled faintly. That was before the wedding, before she'd walked away from a promising job in corporate finance. At the time, she believed in love, in partnership. She left her career to help a deal launch his business, offering skills, strategy, and every ounce of energy she had. She'd prepared investor pitches, balanced books, even brokered introductions to venture capitalists from her own network. But when the company took off, a deal made sure her name faded from every document. He called her his lucky charm, never his partner. Later that night, she pulled out a dusty storage box Mahira had kept from her old apartment. Inside were notebooks, her notes from years ago, business plans, early budgets, even a concept for a financial consultancy designed specifically for women. She turned the pages slowly, as if rediscovering a version of herself she had forgotten existed. By the dim lamplight, she began journaling again. First just thoughts. Then ideas. Then outlines. Something inside her began to shift. Her heartbreak was still raw, but it no longer felt paralyzing. It felt like fuel. Mahira walked in with a bowl of strawberries, catching sight of Layla scribbling furiously. "Back at it?" she asked, her eyes glinting with pride. Layla nodded. "I don't know where I'm going, but I can't stay in this place of pain forever." Mahira smiled, sat beside her, and handed her a berry. "You didn't lose a man, Layla. You dodged a parasite. Now let's rebuild something he can never take from you." Layla smiled through tears. For the first time in weeks, they were tears of purpose. The glass doors of Samreen Qureshi's law office glinted under the midday sun, a sleek and intimidating structure nestled between downtown's towering buildings. Layla adjusted her scarf as she stepped inside, nerves fluttering like moths in her chest. She'd never imagined she'd be sitting across from a divorce attorney, let alone one known for tearing through powerful men like a storm in courtrooms. But Mahira had insisted, if you're going to rise, you need someone who makes men like a deal sweat. Samreen was everything her reputation promised, sharp-featured, sharper-tongued, and entirely immune to pleasantries. "I don't sugarcoat," she said within minutes of their meeting, tapping a manicured nail on Layla's folder. "But you're not just filing for divorce. You're going after blood." Layla blinked. I just want what's mine." Samreen raised a brow. "Good. Because what's yours might be more than you realize." Over the next 2 weeks, Layla provided every financial document she could dig up, from old contracts and spreadsheets to personal journals that detailed the company's early days. Samreen's team cross-checked everything. Then came the bombshell. Layla had signed the first investor contract. Her name was on the foundational paperwork. Silent partner or not, she had legal standing. And if a deal had hidden that from their financial statements? Fraud. When Samreen laid out the legal strategy, Layla felt something shift inside her. Not revenge. Not even anger. Just clarity. This was no longer about a broken heart, it was about reclaiming her voice, her worth, her role in everything she helped build. They filed the divorce petition and simultaneously launched a civil lawsuit for financial fraud. The court date came faster than Layla expected. The courtroom was cold and humming with tension the day the proceedings began. Layla stepped out of the car in a simple but striking black maternity dress, her shoulders back, head high. Mahira walked beside her, offering a silent squeeze of her hand. As they entered the courtroom, gasps rippled through the audience. Adil stood at the front, flanked by his high-priced lawyer and Zara, draped in designer from head to toe, a smug smile dancing on her lips. Layla felt a sudden wave of nausea, not from pregnancy, but from the sheer audacity of it all. Adil spotted her and let out a short, mocking laugh. "She's got baby brain," he said to his lawyer, loud enough for the room to hear. "Let's wrap this up before nap time." Zara giggled. Layla didn't flinch. She looked straight ahead, walking past him like he didn't exist. As they waited for the judge, Adil leaned toward Zara, kissing her temple. "This is going to be fun," he whispered. But Samreen was already unzipping her folder, a shark's grin slowly spreading across her face. "He has no idea," she murmured to Layla. "This isn't going to be fun. It's going to be legendary." As the judge entered and the session was called to order, Layla placed a hand over her belly. Her daughter hadn't even been born yet, but already she was a witness to her mother's greatest transformation. She had walked in alone, yes. But she didn't need an arm to lean on. She had truth. And truth was about to take the stand. The courtroom echoed with quiet tension as Layla took her seat behind Samreen. Papers shuffled. The opposing counsel whispered quickly into Adil's ear, but Adil leaned back in his chair, arms folded, the same confident smirk playing on his lips. He'd shown up like it was a victory lap, like Layla was just another obstacle he'd step over on his way to more success. But then Samreen rose, heels clicking sharply on the marble floor, her eyes fixed on the judge with practiced precision. "Your Honor, today we are not only addressing the dissolution of a marriage," she began, voice clear and firm. "We are bringing forth evidence of deliberate financial omission. My client, Mrs. Layla Sattar, is not merely the spouse of Mr. Adil Sattar, she is the silent co-founder of his business empire." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Adil straightened in his seat, frowning. Samreen continued unfazed, walking over to the exhibit table and lifting a stack of files. Exhibit A, the original investor proposal, with Mrs. Sattar's signature and strategic outline. Exhibit B, bank transfers made from her personal account to fund the company's launch. Exhibit C, an early partnership agreement drafted, though never filed publicly, naming both Mr. and Mrs. Sattar as co-founders. The judge leaned forward with interest. Adil whispered harshly to his lawyer, who flipped through his own documents in a panic. Layla sat silently through it all, hands folded in her lap, her expression unreadable. She wasn't there to gloat or beg. She had nothing to prove to Adil. Her presence alone said everything. By the time Samreen called her to the stand, the courtroom had gone still. Layla took a slow breath and walked up with grace, pausing only to glance at the judge before taking her oath. Her voice didn't tremble as she began. "I helped build that company," she said plainly. "From day one. I worked behind the scenes, handling the numbers, preparing the decks, bringing in the first investors. I gave up my career because I believed in him. In us." She turned her gaze toward Adil, whose face had gone pale. "But I'm not here to ask for a seat at his table," she continued. "I have no intention of returning to the company. I'm not interested in fixing what I already outgrew." She looked at the judge again, calm and composed. "I want what I'm owed. My rightful share. And then I want to walk away. For good." Samreen nodded in approval. The judge said nothing at first, eyes scanning the paperwork. Adil, once full of swagger, now sat rigid in his chair. His jaw clenched. His foot tapped uncontrollably beneath the table. In one afternoon, his world had tilted, and not in his favor. And Layla? She had never looked stronger. The final day of the hearing arrived with a strange calm. Outside, gray clouds hung low as if mirroring the weight of what was about to unfold. Inside the courtroom, the mood was anything but still. Reporters had shown up, sensing a story brewing behind the polished doors. Rumors of fraud, betrayal, and silent ownership had already started circling the business community. But Layla remained steady, dressed in navy blue, her hair pinned back, her eyes sharp with focus. Today was about truth, and she would tell it. Not in anger, but with power. Samreen stood confidently before the judge during closing arguments. "Your Honor," she began, "we have submitted irrefutable documentation that proves Mrs. Layla Sattar's role in the foundation of Adil Sattar Enterprises. This case is not just about divorce. It is about erasure. It's about a woman whose intellect and labor were systematically written out of a company she helped build, by the man she trusted most." She turned, her voice softening just slightly. "With your permission, I'd like to call Mrs. Sattar back to the stand for final testimony." The judge nodded, and Layla rose. Adil rolled his eyes and leaned toward his lawyer, muttering something with a huff of impatience. Zara smirked, clearly expecting a dramatic breakdown, or at the very least, a final plea. Layla took the stand. For a moment, she said nothing. Just breathed. The room grew still. "When I married Adil, I believed in him completely," she began. "We were partners. Or so I thought. I left my job in finance because he said we'd build something together. And we did. I stayed up through nights building budgets. I used my own savings when no one else would invest in his dream." Her voice didn't shake. "I was never afraid of hard work. But I was afraid of becoming invisible. And over time, I did." She paused, glancing at the back of the room. "When I got pregnant, I thought maybe we'd finally settle into our family. But instead, I became a joke. I was mocked for gaining weight, for being tired, for not looking the way I used to. I heard him tell someone at a party that I had let myself go. I heard him say, 'She's just the wife. Just the mother of my kid.' As if that made me small." Her voice softened, but the impact deepened. "I am not small. I was never just a wife. Or just a mother. I am someone who gave everything and was discarded like a draft. But I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here because I will never let my daughter grow up thinking her mother was silent." The judge leaned back, eyes lingering on Layla. The courtroom was absolutely silent. The judge finally spoke. "This court recognizes Mrs. Layla Sattar not only as a co-founder of the company in question, but, based on presented documents and undisputed contributions, as rightful majority shareholder and independent business entity." He looked down at the papers, then back at Layla. "Effective immediately, you are recognized as co-founder and CEO of Layla Holdings, a subsidiary now separated from Adil Sattar Enterprises. The court will proceed with division of assets accordingly." Gasps erupted across the room. Zara's mouth fell open. Her perfectly painted lips quivered slightly. Adil looked as if the floor had just been ripped out from beneath him. His face drained of color. He turned toward his lawyer, confused, shaken. "What the hell is Layla Holdings?" Layla stood slowly from the witness stand, holding her belly protectively. She didn't answer him. She didn't need to. Because now, the world knew who she was. Outside the courthouse, the midday sun had broken through the clouds, but the air still felt tense, heavy with the fallout of what had just occurred. Photographers crowded near the steps, flashes going off like tiny explosions as Layla exited through a side door, shielded by her lawyer and Mahira. But on the front steps, the spotlight was on someone else, Zara. She stormed down the marble stairs, heels clicking furiously, her face flushed, not with embarrassment but with rage. Behind her trailed Adil, moving quickly, trying to catch up, murmuring something low and urgent. Zara turned on him so fast the crowd actually flinched. "You lied to me," she hissed, her voice sharp and clear despite the buzz of reporters. Adil tried to keep his tone calm. "Zara, not here. Let's go somewhere quiet." But she didn't move. Her fury was loud now, raw. "You said she was nothing. Just a housewife. That she was lucky to be married to you. That I was the one you wanted to build a future with." People around them paused. Phones were held higher. One reporter leaned forward with a wide grin. "She was nothing," Zara said again, louder this time, gesturing back toward the courthouse. "That nothing just walked out of there as CEO. You humiliated her while she was pregnant. You used me to distract the world while you erased her. And you made me a part of it." Adil's jaw clenched. "You're overreacting." Zara laughed bitterly. "No. I'm finally reacting." She turned to the crowd and waved her hand. "We're done. He's not a genius. He's just good at taking credit for smarter people's work." Gasps spread through the gathered crowd. Flashes erupted as paparazzi captured the moment. Zara walking away from Adil in her expensive heels and tailored coat, leaving him standing there alone, mouth open, hands reaching for an explanation that never came. He tried to recover, adjusting his blazer, smiling faintly at the cameras. But the charm didn't land this time. The buzz online had already started. Tweets. Headlines. Wife outwits tech tycoon. CEO reveal shocks courtroom. Mistress dumps fraud on courthouse steps. Adil turned, sunglasses hiding his panic, and walked quickly toward his car. But it was too late. His empire wasn't just crumbling. His reputation, once slick and untouchable, was now a punchline in the rise of a woman he never thought would fight back. Weeks after the courtroom victory, Layla stood inside a sleek office space on the 13th floor of a new high-rise, sunlight spilling through glass walls. The plaque on the door read Nura Capital in clean gold lettering. The name had come to her in a dream, a whisper of hope. Nura, meaning light. It was the name she had chosen for her unborn daughter, and now, the name of a company built on clarity, truth, and power. Desks were being delivered. Her assistant, Farah, buzzed with energy as she assembled the first team of analysts and consultants. Layla stood in the center of it all, guiding the vision like she'd always done, only now, no one was hiding her behind the curtain. This was hers. The media attention from the court battle hadn't faded, it had grown. A short video clip from the final hearing, where the judge declared her co-founder and CEO of Layla Holdings, had gone viral within days. Thousands of comments flooded in, women sharing stories of being silenced, overlooked, underestimated. Financial publications picked it up. Entrepreneur podcasts reached out. A single moment of recognition had become a rallying cry. Layla hadn't expected the outpouring of support, but she embraced it. Not for fame. For impact. Investors who once dismissed her as the tech guy's wife, now requested meetings. Some admitted they were embarrassed they hadn't seen her brilliance before. Others simply said, "We want to work with someone like you." By the third month, Nura Capital had signed 5 major clients, 3 of them women-owned startups seeking guidance from someone who had lived through both corporate war and personal devastation. Layla's approach was different. Honest, strategic, intuitive. She didn't just offer financial advice, she offered perspective. Survival had given her wisdom that no degree could. She was invited to speak at the National Women in Business Conference, and though nerves twisted her stomach the morning of, she stepped onto the stage with a calm smile. 100 faces looked up at her, eager, emotional. She wore a pale gray blazer over her maternity dress, her baby bump now full and prominent, a symbol in itself of resilience in motion. She spoke of sacrifice, of being erased, of rebuilding not just from the ashes, but with them. Her voice didn't crack when she mentioned a deal. She didn't need to name him. Everyone knew. They tried to bury me, she said softly, her hand resting over her daughter. But they didn't know I was a seed. The crowd erupted into applause. Some women stood. Others cried. The clip went viral again, but this time, not just among business pages. It made its way onto parenting blogs, women's health groups, and even mainstream news. Layla became more than a courtroom story. She became a symbol of transformation. That night, as she sat by her window, legs tucked beneath her and a warm cup of tea in her hand, she gazed out at the city. Her phone buzzed with new interview requests and partnership offers, but she ignored them for a moment. She placed both hands on her belly and whispered, "We're just getting started, Nura." Because her rise wasn't just about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It was about lighting a path forward. For herself, for her daughter, and for every woman who had ever been told she was just anything. It began quietly, almost like a rumor. A few hushed emails, a delayed project report, a cancelled investor meeting. But soon, the consequences of Layla's courtroom testimony ignited a firestorm a deal couldn't contain. Regulatory authorities launched an official investigation into his company's early-stage funding. Layla's documents had raised serious red flags: misrepresented ownership, falsified partnership claims, and the suspicious erasure of her financial contributions. What had once been buried under years of ego and control was now public record, dissected in full daylight. Within weeks, several major clients began to back away. A luxury tech firm that had previously praised Adil's leadership released a statement suspending all collaborations pending the outcome of the investigation. Another long-term partner, a European finance group, sent notice of contract termination, and in a poetic twist, signed a new deal with Nura Capital instead. Adil tried to save face, pushing out social media posts filled with vague affirmations and promises of internal restructuring. But the narrative had already turned. His carefully curated image, visionary entrepreneur, self-made genius, had cracked. What the public saw now was something else entirely. A man who built his empire on stolen credit and discarded loyalty. Zara, once always by his side in designer dresses and champagne galas, vanished from his events. A few weeks later, she resurfaced, on the front page of a charity newsletter. Smiling in a simple outfit, she stood in front of a banner reading, "Empower Moms, supporting single and abandoned mothers." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. When asked by a journalist whether her new role was inspired by recent events, she simply smiled and replied, "Sometimes we learn the hard way where real strength comes from." She never mentioned Adil's name. She didn't need to. The jab landed. By the third month, Adil's life resembled a hollow shell of what it once was. Lawsuits loomed. His board threatened to remove him. His luxurious penthouse, once a symbol of his triumph, was listed for sale, along with 2 of his prized cars. Even his inner circle, once filled with yes-men and flattery, began to shrink. He sat alone in his office one late evening, the lights dimmed, papers scattered, his inbox filled with rejection and withdrawal notices. His phone buzzed. A notification, another viral clip of Layla, this time, being honored as Entrepreneur of the Month. He turned it off. Silence fell again, broken only by the hum of the building's ventilation. Adil stared at his reflection in the glass, once powerful, admired, envied. Now, just a man undone by his own arrogance. And the woman he once mocked? She hadn't just risen. She'd rewritten the story without him. The skyline shimmered with morning light as Layla stood in front of the tall glass windows of her corner office, the city unfolding beneath her like a living, breathing mosaic. In her arms, baby Nura gurgled softly, wrapped in a soft cream blanket, her tiny fingers curled against her mother's collarbone. Layla kissed her forehead, eyes shining with a calm that only came from surviving a storm and building something new in its place. Behind her, the office buzzed with life, employees moving with purpose, phones ringing, plans in motion. Nura Capital was no longer the bold startup with a viral story. It was now a respected financial force with a reputation for integrity and innovation. Investors waited weeks for consultations. Clients sent handwritten thank you letters. And women across the country wrote to Layla, saying, "You gave me hope." A glossy magazine sat on her desk. The cover featured a photo of Layla in a power suit, holding baby Nura in one arm and a file in the other, a quiet fire in her eyes. The headline read, "CEO, Mother, Warrior." It had gone viral within hours. Not because of scandal but because of truth. A woman who had been mocked for her weight, dismissed as just a housewife, now stood at the helm of a company she had built on courage, strategy, and love. She walked through the halls of her firm, heels clicking against the polished marble, stopping to greet team members, exchanging quick smiles and nods. Everywhere she went, she was respected, not feared, not idolized, but truly respected. Not just because she had succeeded, but because she had done it with grace, and with no one to protect her but herself. That evening, she arrived at the Grand Business Excellence Gala in a floor-length sapphire gown, Nura in the arms of Mahira backstage, surrounded by people who now formed Layla's real support system. The auditorium was packed with industry leaders, journalists, innovators, and entrepreneurs. As the final award of the night approached, a hush fell over the crowd. The announcer stepped up to the podium, adjusting his mic. This year's CEO of the Year is a woman who redefined resilience, rebuilt with dignity, and has not only inspired a generation of entrepreneurs, but mothers, daughters, and leaders across the nation. He paused, a knowing smile on his lips. "Please welcome Layla Sattar." The room erupted in applause. People stood. Some cheered. Some simply clapped with reverence in their eyes. Layla stepped onto the stage, her smile gentle but radiant. In the shadows near the back, behind the final row, Adil watched, alone, unrecognized. He wasn't escorted. No one turned to look at him.